How you doing, everybody? Okay, today is Thanksgiving. Well, it's a little bit past midnight, so it's not Thanksgiving anymore. However, uh, wanted to talk a little bit about the Sony FX30. All right, so there's a couple things that I wanted to run by some people about the Sony FX30. Um, One thing that it's not Netflix approved yet, but it's going to be because they just approved the Sony FX3, which is the same camera, exact same camera as FX30. The only difference is the FX3 has a larger sensor, full frame sensor. And the only advantages you get with a full frame sensor versus a crop sensor is allowing more light to come into the sensor, and also to be able to blur out the backgrounds, get bokeh and all that stuff. So that is the only difference. And as a matter of fact, from the tests that have been out there, the Sony FX30 performs just as good quality and sharpness as the Sony FX3. And because of its oversampling, it's recording in 6K and then writes the 4K video. So it's downsizing. It's recording in 6K and then recording to the media as a 4K video file, which is a lot nicer than just doing it from 4K to 4K, because it's taking that large image, high resolution, and then compressing it down, which gives you a lot greater detail and better resolution, so it looks a lot better than if you just recorded it in 4K and had it output in 4K. So it's basically the same thing as recording a 6K video, taking it post-production, and then when you render it and export it, you export it as a 4K video file. Pretty much the same thing, only that's happening within camera, and there's some advantages to doing it that way versus in the editor. So, okay, so one thing I want to stress about is the ability to record indoors with lights, just like this. I have right here some settings that people might want to know about. Most of the time when you have like a camera like, let's say this Fuji X-T30 or the Fuji X-T3 or the Fuji X-T4 or the Canon R5 or the R6, any of those cameras, excuse me, I gotta get my chair better. Any of those cameras recording, let's say you're recording 30 frames per second, you set your shutter speed to 60, no problem. If you're recording 4K 60, then you set your shutter speed to 120. Thing is with Sony does have 60 shutter speed, and it also has 125 shutter speed. So when you're recording 4K 60, you would set your shutter speed to 125. That's all fine, but if you don't use the shutter angle that's located in the anti-flicker menu, you're going to get banding. So if you're powering lights from the AC outlet, AC current from your outlet in the wall, you're going to get banding. You're going to see black lines slowly raising up your screen. So the only way to prevent that is to use, on the Sony FX30, the only way to prevent that is to set your shutter angle, and you have to set it at specific angles or it's not going to work. So if you don't use the anti-flicker at all and you just use the shutter speed, you're going to see the banding, especially 4K 60, because you're only able to set your shutter speed at 125, which is an odd number. So AC current runs at 60 cycles. In Europe, it's 50 cycles, but in the United States, it's 60 cycles. That means 60 cycles per second. Indoor lights, your lights on the wall and the ceiling, whatever, are flashing really fast. You don't notice it because the eye can't see it because it's going so fast. It's 60 cycles per second. Every second it turned off and then back on 60 times. And the problem is the camera picks it up. So if you're using 60 shutter speed, then that's in sync with the 60 cycles. And it should prevent the banding, but on the Sony FX30 it does not. For some reason you can still see the flickering of the lights. They're more prominent. So I use the anti-flicker, the shutter angle and the anti-flicker menu. And as follows, this is what you would set your shutter angle for each particular frame rate to prevent the banding, and I've tested this, it works. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you want to set your shutter angle at 59.9. If you're shooting 60 frames per second, you want to shoot at 119.9 at the shutter angle. If you're shooting 120 frames per second, it's 239.9. I wrote this down, I made notes of it. I remember, but just to be 100% accurate, I don't want to, give some misinformation. But those are the shutter angles. If you set those, you're going to see that you're not going to see any flicker. You can test it at home. Go ahead and test it at home. It's easy to see, like on a white wall or something. So if you point the camera at a white wall and you have your lights pointed right at it, and you hit record, and you go in the editor, you can scrub through and you can see the lines going up. So you can test it. I tested all the shutter angles to make sure that I'm getting the right one. Makes sense anyway, because 119.9, it's almost 120, right? 59.9, that's almost 60 for frame rate 30, right? So that's what the shutter angle is for, and that's, it's in the anti-flicker menu. Look for it and make sure you set that accordingly if you're shooting indoors. If you're shooting outdoors, it's not really going to matter that much, so it's not a big deal. But indoors, and using lights and powering through the AC, definitely. If you're using lights and powering through a battery, then you shouldn't have to worry about that because that's direct current, and so there's no alternating current. These lights are not flashing. So there is a way to set your clarity and your sharpness if you're not shooting log, and you can do this in the creative settings. I believe that's in the color set menu. You can go in there and you can adjust how much sharpness is applied to your video. Also, you can adjust how much clarity. I have my lights set up, not 100% like I would like. I did it real fast, but to me it looks good enough. So another thing I wanted to bring up is you want to shoot with the Sony FX30 externally. Internally can be very expensive. You have to use either CF Express Type A or the SD cards. So in order to shoot with the highest quality possible internally, you would need a UHS 2 V90 rated SD card. Now for 512 gigabytes, that'll cost you $500. That's $500. Now, if you use the Ninja, on the other hand, you can shoot to a SSD drive that slides right into the back of the Ninja, and your video is recorded to that. You can get a 2 terabyte SSD for about $140 to $150 at most, and it will work perfectly. Now that's for 2 terabytes. In order to match that in SD cards, you would need 4 512 gigabyte SD cards, and that's $2,000. $2,000 versus $150 maybe. That's one of the benefits of it. Also, the Ninja shoots in ProRes, all intra, and it's very good quality. It's very fast when you're editing in your workflow. So what I use is the Ninja 5 Plus. Now, this is capable of doing pretty much everything your camera can do, with the exception of 4K 120. This is capable of handling 4K 120 because you can do this with the Canon and the Fuji, I believe, but you can't do it with the Sony FX30 or the FX3. You can't record to the external recorder, the Ninja, at 4K 120. For some reason, they don't allow it, or it's not. They can fix this with a firmware update that would allow you to do it, because the external recorder can handle it, no problem. So we need to stress to Sony to come up with a firmware update to allow us to do that. That's one of the things. I used to use a rig that had two handlebars, kind of like that, and I put the camera on top of it, and I have my Ninja on top of that, and I would use that for stability. This has stabilization. I don't really use it. I don't really need it. Sometimes I'll turn it on, but this is the Ronin RC2. It's a gimbal. What's great about it, it has extenders on there, but it's just like a tripod, so you can sit it down somewhere on a desk and have your camera up here and just like set it down if you wanted to. But I use this as my rig, and I hold it like this, or I can hold it with two hands like this and move it around, or I can even hold it this way and get stable movement with it. Usually I'll hold it like this, or I can even hold it like this at the bottom right here on my lens if I want to, but sometimes I'll just hold it like this and I'll maneuver it around and pan my shots with this. What's great about it is it has a hookup that can hook up to the micro USB on the camera, and I can set this to focus manually with just this little dial here. As you can see, it'll say zoom/focus, and I could also use it as a zoom. I could just like be moving it around or holding it and just turn the dial and zoom in, and then I could switch it back and then hit focus, and I could bring the focus. Usually I'll leave it on autofocus and autofocus tracking, and I'll do my shots that way for what I do anyway, and I'll just use this to zoom in if I want. If I just want to zoom in optically and get really close up from where I am and not have to move it, I could do it with that. So this makes a good rig because I can have everything locked and not turn this on, or I can unlock it and still operate it, and it's even more smoother. I don't need any stabilization whatsoever. I'll turn it on, and then I can do my zooming or focusing or whatever, and I can do that. Now I don't have the Ninja on top of the camera because it won't balance, so I have an arm that hooks up to this, and my monitor will be, the Ninja will be sitting right over here, and nice and comfortable, and I can move it around, and I can still use the Ninja. And the cord they got on there is the Gerald Undone rated cord, HDMI, full size. It's great. It works awesome. It's nice and flexible, and it's easy on the gimbal. So I have it hooked up to my camera to the Ninja, and it doesn't bother it whatsoever. It still keeps it stable. Okay, so for the rest of this segment, we're going to shoot ProRes RAW HQ. Okay, so now we're shooting ProRes RAW. I like it. I like the way it works. It does a great job. My computer edits it pretty nicely, ProRes, and yeah, I don't have a problem with it whatsoever, and I like it. I think that this opens up a whole new world of shooting, especially for the stuff that I do, to give me higher quality. I can do my adjustments and color management, color changes, grading, and all that stuff. I got more flexibility because it's raw. And so it's just like in photography, if you're shooting RAW versus JPEG, if you're shooting JPEG and you don't nail your white balance properly, or the color adjustments you're going to do is too much, it's going to degrade the video, the image in the video. It's going to just fall apart. But doing it in RAW, as you know, when you edit pictures in RAW format, you've got more flexibility. You can go a lot further with it. Same thing with ProRes RAW and video. Pretty much the same thing. And once I get it into Premiere Pro, the first thing I can do right away is I can adjust my exposure. Or I can go into Catalyst Browse if I want. I can change the ISO and other settings like that. So yeah, I'm liking ProRes RAW, and right now I'm shooting in HQ, and so you can get an idea and see what the quality is. If you're looking to shoot cinematic stuff and you're just starting out, whether you're going to be shooting models, whether you're going to be shooting people on skateboards, BMX bikes, motorcycles, cars, music videos, this is going to be the perfect camera for you. It's going to give you great quality. It's going to be a lot easier to use, and you can play around with learning Cine IE and S-Log3 and all that stuff. There's a whole new world that opens up to you, and one great thing about this camera is you don't have to worry about it overheating, because it has a cooling fan, an actual fan inside that blows all the heat out. With the Fuji XH2, I believe, that has just an attachment fan with a tiny little hole in the back that pulls air out, but it's really not as effective as the fan that's on the Sony FX30. Nowhere near it. And so I think that was kind of dumb. I think it was a mistake with Fuji. They must have went, you didn't put that in our camera, and it's too late. They already manufactured it, or, so it's probably pre-production or something like that. But, and you have to buy the attachment fan. It doesn't come with it. So you got to pay extra money. I think it's like a couple $100. That's ridiculous. I think any camera company who creates a video camera, a camera that's made to do video, 4K, 60 frames per second, all these great things, they need to put a cooling fan in their camera. Forget about keeping it nice and small and stuff like this. Want this powerful little camera to keep it compact and nice and small, like the size of a pack of cigarettes. I mean, come on. I mean, these are cinematic cameras. They're making these for people to do high quality video. Put a fan on. I mean, just install a fan inside. It's not that hard. Make it a little bigger if you have to, and do it. Just like I was saying with the full-size HDMI, these camera companies who continuously continue to have a micro HDMI fitting on their camera, which are lousy. They fall out. They break after, they're so delicate. Put a full-size HDMI. I mean, make some room if you have to. It's not that hard. Sony FX30 is kind of small, not too much bigger than the Fuji X-T4 or anything. It's got a full-size HDMI. It's got a cooling fan in it. You can do it. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. So it's about time that Sony came up with something like this. Full-size HDMI, cooling fan on the back. Great. This is all awesome. I mean, that's one of the nice things that makes this camera awesome, other than also that it shoots very well, high quality, good performance, well built. It's nice and solid. It's got screw holes all around it, as if the camera was a cage in itself. So you don't even have to put a cage on it. You can still put attachments on it, on the sides, on the top, on the bottom. It's great. It's unbelievably great. Anyway, I hope this video was enlightening to you, and I hope you got some good information out of it. And if you liked the video, click on like, and if you want to get information on new videos that comes out, click on subscribe and you'll be notified. So if you did like this video, yes, please click like. But if you didn't like this video, just like Gerald Dunn says, feel free to click the dislike button twice. Alright people, have yourself a good day, and happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and like I said, I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.